Defenders are getting tired. Backside look. Spectacular. Played it will be. Steals it. Evander Kane.
His shot tipped in front, loose. Oh my goodness! And somehow that stayed up too. They're on their feet in Calgary. Have not been able to get it done. That was left in the middle of Jeffrey. Second.
Hey guys, it's two guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel and
I'm Evan. How you guys all doing today? We got a loaded show, Pavel, today.
We got quite a few new guests. We got Brent back. Thank you, Brent. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back again. This is great.
Excellent. Do you want to just tell us quickly what one of those jerseys are in the background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is the Trail Smoke Eaters senior teams jersey. I'm from Trail, so the Smoke Eaters, as you can see there, that's it's the team around here, right? So I thought I'd represent them tonight a little bit.
They get more fans than the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, definitely.
That doesn't take much.
Well, excellent. Thanks for sharing. And we got a special guest, local boy, super fan, got to, I will admit, be in the Edmonton Sun on the front cover when the arena was being built, Rogers Place here, right? We got our very own Jacob. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your passion for hockey, where it emerged from.
Sure. You mentioned the Edmonton Sun, which I'll just bump this up here for a sec. It actually happens to be on my wall. There's the front cover. Minus the glare. Sorry about that. That was a winning opportunity. As far as what's behind me and where the passion for hockey comes from, massive Oilers fan. Like you said, local boy here. My parents used to make a lakefront rink out of Lake Isle. Pretty much growing up, so I learned to skate from a young age. We always had nets and sticks, and my dad would be out there 3 times a day, shoveling the rink off or using the quad to make sure we always had a nice rink to skate on. So the passion for hockey started at a young age. It's been tough sledding for the last few years as an Oilers fan for a little while, but the rest, there's a bunch of Oilers memorabilia on the wall and Team Canada stuff and Sidney Crosby's goal in the Olympics in 2010, and
Sweet.
big fan.
So big question here, Jacob.
Go
So
for it.
have you ever been voted MVP of your floor hockey, ball hockey, ice hockey team?
No, no.
Okay.
I did the goaltender, and I probably let in too many. So I would probably compare myself to Bobby Lou, where I'd be a better presence on Twitter than I would for my actual goaltender.
I love it. Love it.
I think the better question here is how can you be a true Oilers fan if you have a Ryan Kessler jersey with what he did to the Edmonton Oilers and Cam Talbot in 2016, 2017? I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I actually expected the chirp on that. The jersey was a gift for one, and it's actually only hanging up on the wall because of the first topic we're going to talk about for all-time rivalries.
So I just have a question. Do you have Cam Talbot's pads that go with the jersey? Okay, guys, if you don't know what's going on, go back to what was it, 2017, the playoffs. You got to check out the great comeback by the Ducks. Okay, anyway, we got a packed show. We do have some news. Pavel, why don't you start us off with a little bit of news around the NHL?
Well, we want to pay our respects to the Gretzky family with Walter passing away in the last little bit. Our thoughts, prayers, condolences. Walter was the greatest hockey dad ever. I mean, everyone has a bit of a story. There was a great procession and a great eulogy given by Wayne at his funeral or memorial. He was a great hockey dad. And I mean, he was very proud and he was very approachable. Everyone loved him. He was living in his Brampton home for the longest time. I mean, do you guys have any stories about him? Because I loved him as a dad and as a hockey figure. And I think he belongs as a builder in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But your thoughts, Brent?
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty unexpected when I heard the news. It was pretty sad. It's funny because I just found his book, the Walter Gretzky book. It's a really good book. If you haven't read it, read it. It's all about having the stroke and everything. And yeah, it was very sad. And I did see Wayne's eulogy there, and that was also pretty touching. So yeah, it was. He is. You're right. He is like Canada's hockey dad.
Yeah, it was pretty beautiful. Jake, you any thoughts?
Just sadness. Anytime that you're in your 80s, and I understand that his health had been failing for a few weeks, your heart goes out to the family for sure. It was gonna come at some point. It's just it seemed unexpected to me because I hadn't followed the family that closely. Anytime those sort of news, it seems the Oilers franchise and their alumni have been kind of hit in the last year and a bit here. Joey Moss and Peter and John Muckler, etc. So just a rough go for Oilers family and alumni.
Yeah, excellent. And so we're just gonna mourn and send our thoughts and prayers to him. Some of the other stuff going on. I don't know if you guys have followed with the Caps. Tom Wilson's been suspended for 7 games on the head hit on the Boston Bruins. Remind me, guys, the player.
Sorry, I don't remember his name.
Escaping me.
I've only read it 15 times.
Yeah. I think we owe an apology to Mike Smith, who was on the show last week. He's a big Bruins fan. I'm sure he would know.
Okay, Mike, if you're watching right now, anyone's following us, just quickly put this down in the chat right now in the comments and highlight who the player was that got leveled. So that's a whole other story and topic. I think
Brandon Carlo.
Oh. That's it. But that's a whole other topic. We got to talk about, intent to injure out there and some of the stuff going on in the NHL. And it's really someone's going to get hurt really bad. There's another guy just south of Edmonton down in Calgary that I'm worried he's going to hurt someone's career soon too. We're talking about Matthew Tkachuk with the way he comes in. Great player. Tom Wilson's a great player, but yeah. So, well, we should get to our topic here. We're going to have to jump in, guys. I want to give us all enough time here. So today, what we want to do, everyone, is we want to talk about the best NHL rivalry in hockey. This can be past or present that's currently happening. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go around, get your take. We're all probably going to have different takes. We might have some of the same, might not. Really interested to hear what you guys have to say. So who should we put up first here, Pavel?
I think Brent's going to lead us off here. Brent, what do you got?
Sure. Hey, you know what? I was pretty excited when this topic came up. You know, rivalries make the game. Right? Without rivalries, the game is not that great. I mean, the game's great, but it's not that entertaining, you know? So, and it doesn't matter whether it's player and player rivalries or it's team versus team rivalries. Obviously, as an Oiler homer, I've always loved that Battle of Alberta right from the get-go, right? The Semenko and the Hunter fighting and all the smashing and bashing, and even this Steve Smith screw-up where he scored on banked it off here and in. And that rivalry over the years has been so awesome. But when this topic came up, I started thinking, like, they're Montreal-Boston. That's a great rivalry, you know. The Pittsburgh-Philadelphia and the Vancouver-Chicago. Like, there's more rivalries. It's just, it's what makes the game so great, so awesome, because it's entertaining, right? Rather than just having two teams just going at it for no reason. But you know what? This year, with the new season, with the new divisions and how they're sticking together, like, I'm loving the Toronto-Edmonton rivalry right now. You know, that's, to me, they're pushing each other. And after Edmonton got smoked there 3 games in a row, I imagine that further on down the line, that's going to be a real deep rivalry and most likely end up being in the playoffs. I'm still not sure exactly, you know, how things are going to end up, but yeah, it'd be great to see those two guys or those two teams.
So, Brent, are you taking the Battle of Alberta pretty much as probably your most favorite of all the rivalries?
Yeah. You know what, and like in the 80s, even the Calgary team, you know, as much as I despise Calgary, they had such an awesome team.
Ottawa,
right?
Joel Otto, Jim Poplinski.
Yeah. Yes, Nieuwendyk. You know, Fleury was just coming in. Lanny McDonald was still there. They had
Crazy.
Al McGinn, right? Like they had some pretty deadly players and great team. So I love those battles. I loved the line brawls. I loved the fights. I loved
Cool.
That was in those games.
That's incredible. What about you, Jake? What are your thoughts on the best rivalry in the NHL?
So, being that we're generally Edmonton-based, I knew that the Battle of Alberta would come up, especially now that we're playing, 10 times a year versus the Flames. But I digress. Although that the Oilers are my favorite, that rivalry has fizzled. I wasn't old enough to really watch. I kind of grew up, but it was a child in the 80s for all of that. So like the deep-seated hatred never really happened for me. The Oilers and the Flames were both kind of middling franchises for a while I really got into hockey. So the first rivalry that really sort of meant anything for me was once I started going out and watching playoff games with friends and visiting the Pint and Hudson's and that sort of thing. And it sort of coincided with why Ryan Kessler's jersey is on my wall. But you'll notice it's not the one I'm wearing because they weren't the team I was cheering for. So I'm referring to the Canucks versus Blackhawks in the late 2000s and early 2010s.
Good one.
So
Good one.
They had only faced each other once in the 80s. It started in 2009. It's pretty much instant hatred. The Hawks won that series in the second round 4-2. They lost in the conference final to Detroit that year, who ended up winning the cup. But then the following season, they faced each other again in 2010 in the second round. Again, won 4-2 by the Hawks. And then that was their first of their 3 Stanley Cup wins with a 21-year-old Patrick Kane and 22-year-old Jonathan Toews leading the way. And then the third year and the biggest year of the rivalry was 2011 when Vancouver came in pumping their tires after a President's Trophy season, and the defending Hawks, I'm not going to say stumbled into the playoffs, but they were the 8th place team. And the Canucks raced out to a 3-0 early series lead. And then Rafi Torres had a brutal hit on Brent Seabrook that I think could have been the series changer. It almost lost in the series with the motivation it gave the Blackhawks. They stormed back and won 7-2, 5-0, chasing Roberto Luongo in both games, which kind of started the whole Luongo and Corey Schneider goaltending battle in net there, the carousel. However, they saved themselves and redeemed, and they were down 1-0 in Game 7, and Chicago tied it. Or sorry, they're up 1-0, and Chicago tied it with about a minute and a half left on a shorthanded goal by Jonathan Toews. And Alex Burrows saved their bacon in overtime. Otherwise, they would have been the 4th team in NHL history to blow a 3-0 Game 7, or sorry, 3-0 best of 7 series lead. Obviously, we know they went to the Stanley Cup Finals versus Boston that year. I got the jersey from a friend because I was not going to cheer for the Bruins. If I'm being fully, I've worn it, but it is the only playoff round I've ever worn it. And I was cheering for the Blackhawks up until they beat them. The other reason why this is the greatest rivalry as far as I'm concerned, it's because this rivalry is what started the probably my favorite goal song of all time, when Chelsea Dagger plays, because the Blackhawks became a playoff mainstay. It is my absolute favorite goal song to hear. Anyway, that's my story. That's the reason why. There's nothing else that sort of compared to that, like that early hatred between the teams, and it was also kind of the Canucks' best shot, and it was the beginning of a dynasty with the Blackhawks there. So
I think Edmonton Oilers are very, very aware of this last season playoffs in the bubble of Chelsea Dagger. I think they're a little annoyed with that song.
No, absolutely. I understand that is painful to us now, but I don't look at that little best of 5 series as anything more than as an anomaly. The reason why the rivalry sort of meant something is it gave me a renewed interest while the Oilers were literally at the beginning of their decade of darkness and just sort of plundering around. And it gave me something to cheer for and be excited of, because we were never making the playoffs. So I credit that rivalry for renewing my interest in watching the playoffs, even though the Oilers weren't going to be in it. So, I should probably flip that around. Blackhawks hat as well to represent.
Woo!
This actually came from the United Center. I'll give one more little story on it. I got a chance to do a trip down there and watch a game versus the Rangers. And Marian Hosta scored 4 years ago when he still was playing in the league. And I got to celebrate the song in person at the United Center, only to have Alain Vignon, the Rangers coach at the time, decide to challenge his offside, and the goal was called back, and they lost 1-0 in overtime. So my celebration of my favorite goal song is not even on a real goal. It didn't even count on the. It's like it was a myth. So I've never got to actually celebrate a real goal. So
that's a great story. Yeah, I've been there before. It's a beautiful, beautiful arena, and both with the Bulls playing there and some of the statues they have out there. I'm pretty sure they're going to have a Patrick Kane statue and Jonathan Toews statue out there in the years to come. Evan, what about you? What are your thoughts on the best rivalry in the NHL?
I just want to make a comment on the 80s with the rivalry with Chicago and Vancouver. I remember Tiger Williams chasing Steve Larmer all over the ice everywhere, trying to instigate. Larmer wasn't having any of it. And of course, Tiger gets the penalty, and he sticks his tongue out from the penalty box over at Larmer because he got the penalty and Larmer went on to score a goal during that time. Okay, guys. So I'm totally off the map from so far what you guys have been talking about. So I'm going to, I'm going to tell you. So I was a Flame fan. I grew up in Calgary. I first was a Canuck fan, then I became a Flame fan in 1984. I did not become an Oiler fan until actually it was 2003 before I actually became Flame Oiler fan. But anyway, one of the Battle of Alberta was fabulous. I remember Cement Head, as we called them in Calgary with Semenko. But the battle that I find interesting, I'm not going to pick it, is the Flyers Penguins. It was mentioned earlier by Brent. Those two teams they were brethren when they came into the expansion. It doesn't take much to get the hatred flowing between those two teams. That's why I'm excited to see Ron Hextall going back as a GM and just seeing where this thing goes when fans are in the. I'm taking the Quebec Nordique versus the Montreal Canadiens, man. It was a hate fest from the time the Nordiques entered the NHL from the WHA days. Now, the Canadiens and Nordiques, they met five times in their history. Now, remember, the Nordiques weren't in there often. And the Canadiens, they took 3 of those playoff series. If it had been longer, I think because they became the Avalanche, they had a great team starting. But they were always fighting for the Battle of Quebec. It was kind of like the haves versus the have-nots. But they hated each other. So the part that I remember is in 1993, the Nordiques won the first 2 games. The Canadiens came back, and they took the final 4. But the big thing about that time, there was also the infamous moment, I believe it was 84, 85, 84. The Nordiques and the Canadiens, they got in what was called the Good Friday Brawl. 10 ejections, man. 252 minutes in penalties. Bench clearing brawls. It was fab. So that's what I'm taking, Pavel. What do you got, man?
I mean, you guys have mentioned some pretty solid ones. Brent mentioned the one that I kind of alluded to was Montreal versus Boston. I mean, these are the 2 oldest teams, the original 6 that have been battling it out since 1924. So in 3 years, this is a 100-century-old rivalry. They hate each other. And after almost 100 years, they are still at each other's throat. We had Mike Smith on last week. He hates Montreal. His family hates Montreal. And if you talk to any Canadiens fan, they hate Boston, right?
Like, I thought you were going to say they hate Montreal.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys recall the hit a couple of years ago when Montreal and Boston were in the playoffs, and I think Zdeno Chara whacked out Max Pacioretty completely, which could have been a penalty. Yeah. Like, it was bad. Or the way that PK Subban knocked out Brad Marchand, right? Or how, Lucic wouldn't shake someone's hand in line. Like, the rivalry was, like, ingrained. And I think that's where the rivalry for what you have for longevity, Montreal versus Boston, you can never replicate. Now, unfortunately, right now, they can't play. It's the first time ever, given the fact that they're not playing in the same division. But, when they get there, and if potentially they get there, especially Montreal, because Boston looks like they're a top-tier team, who knows what will take place.
Wow. As you're saying this, man, I'm thinking through, Brent, you started off when you said it's just not the rivalry of teams, it's the players. And Pavel, as you're saying that, I'm sitting there going, man, I forgot about something. And that's just in in the last decade here of what's kind of happened and come down. Forget about the past. So, well, we only got so much time, and our next topic is going to be an interesting one to hear what you guys have to say. Talking about the Battle of Alberta, it leads us south to Calgary. I want to talk about struggling franchises and what are you going to do about it? So we know there's been a coaching change that's just recently happened here. So I'm really interested if you guys are the general manager and you get to kind of GM. You got to rebuild, you got to retool, you got fans after you. How are you going to do this in Calgary? So let's talk about Calgary specific, and we'll come to the second team if we get enough time later on.
I'd love to have Jake, because Jake was so thorough in his research. I want him to show the fans what he did to prepare. Go ahead, Jake.
I'm not very good when I don't have information in front of me, so I decided that I'm going to focus on what I think this is Calgary's last shot. This is not moving to Daryl Sutter for the second time is actually not a safe move. A safe move is hiring somebody more recently let go, like Claude Julien, or Gerald Gallant, or even a Bruce Boudreau, for example. Bringing back someone like Daryl Sutter is risky because he's always been a tough coach, and he's got someone that's going to push the players, almost in a John Tortorella way, minus the yelling. He's old school. The reason I'm actually excited to get a chance to talk about him is I actually went to his 25th high school reunion because my dad went to school with him. He wasn't there because he was the coach of the San Jose Sharks at the time, but nonetheless, that sort of farm boy, tough as nails persona sort of brings itself to the locker room and always gets the most out of the players. I like him. I don't like the Flames, but I think that this is actually a good move for them. They've had 3 of the Sutter brothers coach there before. Brian started it off and was there 97 to 2000. Daryl was there the first time, this is the second obviously, but he was there the first time as a coach from 2003 to 2006. And then Brent was there 2009 to 2012. Now, he's the only one of the 3 to get them to the playoffs, and he has 33 playoff games there to boot as well, including the 2004 Stanley Cup Finals. Now, he calls it unfinished business, and I think that that's a really good way of looking at it because he also was the team's general manager. He stepped down from the head coaching in 2006 and stayed on as their GM until 2010.
Yeah.
Obviously, then moving to LA, he won a couple cups with LA in 2012 and 2014. Kind of reestablishing the defensive hockey mindset. The reason why I think this is going to be really good for Calgary is because what he did in LA can still work. Defense always wins championships. They beat the Oilers to the top free agent goaltending target this season in Jacob Markstrom. Now, jury's out on whether or not the 6 year, $6 million per contract is going to play out when he's 35, 36, 37 years old at the end of the contract. But for now, I think that was the best thing they could have done. But I think that they made this risky move because this is maybe the last chance that either Brad Treliving as general manager has, or the current makeup of their core players, Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan and Elias Lindholm. These guys, the last time in their playoffs, they beat the Jets in the play-in series, but they completely folded when Dallas Stars gave even a little bit of pressure. They had a 2-0 lead in Game 6 and let 7 goals in. They just folded and crumbled. So this team, time and time again, can have great regular seasons. They're the best team in the Pacific Division just a couple years ago, and went into the playoffs nice and hot, but folded in the playoffs. They don't seem to have the grit and the ability to overcome adversity to succeed in the playoffs. So I think this is their last chance. I don't know if it means that if this experiment doesn't work, I don't know if it means Brad Treliving's out a job, or if they start what is going to potentially be a large rebuild in Calgary and start shipping out some pieces. So I'm excited for what he's potentially going to do. This kind of feels like the most Disney kind of plot the NHL could have pulled since the Mighty Ducks. You got a guy that's been back on the farm in Viking for 4 years. He hasn't coached since the 2016 season in LA. So we'll see. I'm optimistic. I enjoy Daryl Sutter as a person, so I'm hopeful that they can pull their socks up enough to get to the playoffs, because it seems like we'll be destined for the 2nd or 3rd spot, and Toronto will run away with the 1st. But if they can knock down the doors and stay in the playoffs at the 4th seed and keep Montreal out, then maybe we get a battle of Alberta in the playoffs, and that's what everyone would like to see.
Be sweet.
Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I love the signing. I think they do kind of need a kick in the butt. Jake's not wrong. I mean, they do need to play tough. They need to be more physical. I mean, you're looking at their stats. Like Goudreau, he's got 22 points in 25 games. He's the top. Like it drops off. Lindholm's right there, and then Kachuk and Monahan, and it kind of starts to tail off. And a lot of their problem, I think, is their bottom half. Like their centers are good. They got the goaltending. They need to do some tweaking on the wingers and on that bottom six, I think, and even add one more better defenseman than what they're rolling right now. On a side note, I was kind of bummed out. My cousin Ryan, he's the assistant coach there.
He coached on Saturday night, right?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was excited for him that he was, getting the opportunity to be a head coach in the NHL for a game. But I also didn't want to see him win either, right?
They played well though, man. They came out well. They worked hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, the events beforehand kind of, I think, set a lot of that into motion too. I mean, you lost your coach, and things need to change. But I do know that Daryl specifically asked when Ryan was left Kelowna, because he was the coach of the Kelowna Rockets, and he did some work with the junior team too as well. But when he left and made the decision to go to Stockton for the Flames, Daryl actually wanted him to go and to go to the LA's farm team and coach them. So they do have a history there. So you know what, and maybe in a way, maybe this is going to be a good thing for Ryan, who in my opinion, should be the next coach after Daryl's gone, and give Ryan a chance. He's always done really well as a coach. So, but I like the foundation that they got there now. I'm old school, I guess. I just like the Sutter signing. I think imagine him in his cowboy boots walking in there, start booting boys around, but. As far as to fix Calgary, I don't really think they're too far broken, to be honest with you. They just need to do a little tweaking here and there. Kachuk, I hate that kid because he's, on Calgary and I'm an Oilers fan, but man, I wish he was on our team. Like that's every team needs a guy like him. That's kind of like Marchand, how Marchand used to be, right? Like that happy little, but he'd hit and he would nail you, right? So. I think Calgary's got a lot of good pieces there. They just need a little more.
Kessler in Vancouver, same thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's why you hate him, man.
Wilson in Washington Capitals, right? Ryan Reeves in Las Vegas. Like you need those pest players. Yeah.
Yeah.
Evan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No. So I think I'm pretty much with what I'm hearing you guys all saying here too. My thing, I guess that, so when it comes to Calgary, one of the things is I do think Daryl is the good kick in the backside, but he's only got a 2-year, 3-year shelf life. So this is kind of them pushing. I'm worried they push too quick. They are notorious for bad starts, and I know we got a shorter season. Because it's just been kind of their history. I think that they would have pulled out of it with a few other kinds of changes. I think Treliving is getting more chances, and it's his team that he's kind of built. But let me just say this, and I'm going to make a couple you heard it here first on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Actually, I've been talking about this for a while into the offseason last year. I think what you're looking at is Goudreau is leaving to the New York area. He's got 1 year left on his contract. He will not make it happen, guys. Last year, you guys saw him against they dried up. Even against Winnipeg, they were barely scoring their top guys. Monahan, he fits the role. Let me say this, though. I do not think Monahan is he is like a Nugent Hopkins. He is not a number one. You cannot win a cup with Monahan as your number one center, unless you have 3 Monahans that you're playing with. But I think, and granted, there's a lot of rumors. People are gonna hiss me on, boo me on this. I think Goudreau, they're gonna pull something out of this. I don't think it will be by the trade deadline unless they're out of it, because there's not much to trade within Canada. That'll be the problem. It might be an off season, but I think Gaudreau's going to the New York area or the Philadelphia Flyers. So Jersey, Flyers, Rangers, and I don't think it's the Rangers, but Islanders. Now, I do believe they're going to make a push for Taylor Hall to bring him in, move Tkachuk up to the top line with Monahan, and I think that they're looking at bringing Taylor Hall in as that number 2, and they'll be able to afford him. That's my take. I've been pushing on this. Hall likes Alberta. He'd like nothing more than be part of that rivalry with Edmonton just up north, right? And we know they can't afford him. And Hall is not settling for less money. So anyway, as much as to all our Calgary followers and stuff, I feel for you, man. But I think you're going to get a kick in the backside, and you're going to make a big push to get that 4th place still in the division. What do you got, Pavel?
No, very, very good points. Everyone's kind of touched on everything that I thought. I think you guys are focusing a lot on the coach, which I think Jeff Ward didn't do a bad job. He was over 500 as a coach, and he was put in a kind of a position with when Bill Peters had to be let go for, other reasons that had nothing to do with the organization or the way they were playing. It was more so just, it was personality and what he said off the ice and whatnot. So I don't think that the coaching is the issue. I don't think the goaltending or the back end is the issue. I honestly think it's their top line. And like you guys indicated, something has to change with Monahan, Gaudreau, and Lindholm. One of those 3 pieces has to go get moved around. You have some good, solid pieces coming up. You have players that turn it up in the playoffs, such as Lucic did last year, as did Sam Bennett. And again, now they're looking at trading Sam Bennett, or, there's rumors supposedly about him going maybe to Toronto. One of the things that I thought maybe Trey Living would do was actually pursue Pierre-Luc Dubois, who was a center, because they could have used him as a center there, and he would have fit in well to that system. Now, will Daryl Sutter have success? I hope so. I hope the Calgary Flames go to the finals, even as an Oilers fan, because it's great for Alberta, it's great for the province, and again, it's a Canadian team going to the final. I think they need to tweak something in that room, and there's something going on internally that is just not clicking. It's amongst the players. You cannot fix it. It's the same thing with Buffalo. It's the same thing with other teams who are struggling. Something in that room isn't clicking. And until you fix that, you cannot fix that team moving forward. Otherwise, on paper, they should be an elite team. They should be in the top 3 in Canada. But that's just my thought.
Brent, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Jeff Ward not the Edmonton Roadrunners? So they put Todd Nelson in for the OK, right?
Yeah,
for OKC.
yeah.
So he started the first year on the launch. I know we had worked together with the OKC time. But so, and I thought he was okay with the Roadrunners, but right. I never felt he was a top end coach. And I actually disagree. I think he could not get a hold of that room. He's just not that kind of guy. I don't know.
So all the guys who have, talked about Jeff Ward, who he was out in Boston for a while, loved him. He's a great guy. He communicated. Yeah. I think if anything, Daryl Sutter's going to have a hard time connecting with the young guys, especially with the game. He reminds me a little bit of a Babcock light, because Babcock did not tolerate. He was the coach. Yeah. You did as he says, right? Not what the players want. And that players have more of a voice now. They have agents, they have teams around them. How do you think that's going to play around with some of the guys? Maybe like an older, like a Lucic and Giordano, they'll buy on board. But the younger guys, are they going to be buying in?
That's why Gaudreau's going, baby. Right? He is not a player. And I was actually thinking Burke might put a push in for Bennett to get him over in Pittsburgh. I don't think so now. I think Bennett, you're going to be seeing for sure. I think you're going to find him as a top 2. I think Sutter is exactly what Bennett needed. For those that don't know, but Bennett was actually endorsed by Dale Hawerchuk. Mark Scheifele and Sam Bennett were endorsements by Dale Hawerchuk back in the day. But anyway, guys, we're running a little bit late. Jake, thanks for joining us. Brent, thanks so much. We appreciate you guys in here. We want you guys to join us in again next week. But we better get going. Call it a wrap. Thanks, Pavel, man.
Thanks, Evan. And as you always say,
in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice. Have a good night, guys.
Cheers, man. Take care.